Thank you, Coach, for being here today to talk with us. First of all, how has the offseason been going so far?
God, we just jumped right into this. No small talk, huh? It's just bam.
Hey, Allison gave me 30 minutes. I'm going to maximize every second of it.
Our off season has probably been the best one, probably since our first off season when we got here.
Excellent.
You guys probably know there was a change in our strength and conditioning. We had to go back and do some things differently. We had to get bigger. We had to get stronger. We had to get tougher. We had to learn to overcome some. I call it adversity, sometimes some things happen and we got down a little bit a year ago and couldn't recover. So I think for me personally, it's been the best off season we've had.
It's good to hear. I like that.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Do you have a question for him, Tim?
Yeah, so obviously with the departure of Nate Fuquay, you have the arrival of Stags coming in from Coastal. Can you give us an idea of how that transition is going? Do you expect us to see anything as fans different this fall when we see you guys on the field?
Yes. So the transition for Coach Staggs has been, when you hire a defensive coordinator after the spring practice, it's a little bit more difficult than having a change before spring practice because, spring practice, which certainly you gain knowledge and things out of it. We weren't able to actually get that done during that. He wasn't able to really truly see our players kind of getting after it, so to speak, in his scheme. When in the months since or 2 months since, we've had an opportunity to get out there and we call player-led practices. So the implementation of that defense has been going in. It's going to continue to go in. And there's going to be what I think is going to be a huge difference between our defense a year ago and our defense coming up. I think we're going to be a more aggressive defense. We're going to be a pressure defense, multiple fronts, something we didn't do a lot of in the past, and that's going to be something I really enjoy because, you can really hone in on one front or one coverage and typically there's multiple coverages, but one simple front. But we're going to have multiple fronts, and so as a fan, you're going to sit up there and say, okay, at this point there was a 4 down front. At this point there's a 3 down front. Why is he? But I don't understand why he's dropping. He's rushing. So it's going to be a fun fall camp for us to see it.
I guarantee you I will not be seeing that in the stands watching because I won't know what's going on.
Well, hopefully when you see the quarterback hit from the blind side a few times, you say, now I understand.
That's what I like. I like seeing the quarterbacks going down and us crossing the end zone. That's what I like to see.
And hopefully keep other teams on their toes too, right? If they're not seeing the
that's the whole point.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Sometimes in the past, and if Coach Fuquay was sitting right here, I'd be like, we're probably a little vanilla. I mean, you could kind of see what was coming at times. When you have the dogs to go out there and play that kind of defense, you can go play that kind of defense.
Otherwise, you have to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah, it seemed like under Fuquay, we would start the season out frustratingly slow on defense, but then finish out incredibly strong. Like, it wasn't not necessarily last year, but maybe it was 2 years ago, where we felt like, again, this is, talk about from a fan side, what it looked like to us. Struggling those last 4 games. The defense played lights out, getting picks left and right, and putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, making him to make bad throws. So hopefully, that we can play a full season of that type of defense.
Well, we would all love to play a perfect season,
right?
I mean, that's hard to do in this day and age. But both offensively, defensively, special teams wise, it's our motto around here: start fast and finish strong, and that's certainly our goal.
Excellent. So in addition to the coaching changes, there's been a lot of turnover thanks to the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Losing a lot of guys to what's perceived as bigger programs and bringing in guys from all over the place. How has the transfer portal changed off seasons and recruiting and everything for you?
Well, I mean, you have to be a roster manager, so you got to know, who's departing and who you need to recruit, and ultimately that's the number one thing that has changed. A year ago, we didn't know we were going to lose 10, 11 guys to the transfer board. And for whatever reason, they took off. And then we got to say, okay, we had our initial number that we needed to sign. And now we have 11, 12 more guys we got to go replace. So recruiting just continuously is a surprising event day after day. The NCAA has made it so easy for the student athlete to pick up and go from one place to another. Even now, I mean, if you're a graduate transfer, you can leave anytime you want. You can roll right up until 3 days before the game and say, hey, I'm out, and go and transfer to another institution, which is baffling to me that can happen. And I do understand that there needs to be the opportunity for all student athletes to go and find success and happiness, and sure. But for a lot of this is just because other institutions, other schools are coming after your guys and offering them, I guess, an opportunity they can't turn down.
Has the most recent changes changed your approach? I think like when you first came in, you weren't big on transfer portal, if I'm not mistaken, and you've had to lean into it more in the past couple of years.
Well, I mean, anytime you lose an older successful player, you have to replace that guy with an older player as well,
right?
A veteran player. Otherwise, you can't replace that guy with a high school athlete. Otherwise,
right.
You can get your head beat in. So yeah, I mean, I love building teams. I love building men. That's probably why I love the coaching so much, is seeing a young man that's immature and comes in here and doesn't know how to work, doesn't know how to study, and doesn't know how to do a whole lot of things, then matures into a man that you're really proud of at the end of his career. And you don't really get to do that with a transfer.
Right.
It's like just, hey, let's throw a Band-Aid on it. But in this day and age, you have to adjust. So yes, I've changed my mentality just because, yes, we've got to go out there and be successful. That's what we're here to do.
Yes, Tim and I were talking about before we came in here was looking at it. You used to be you would sign these guys or recruit these guys, and you look forward to seeing them develop over the 3 or 4 years from a fan side. But now it's almost like the college basketball days, where every year is just a completely different squad coming in. You don't really get to build that kind of long-term relationship watching the guys play.
And the transfers that we've brought in now. You do develop that relationship with them. But for the most part, they've already been developed, and but we get to, I guess, develop them into our culture now. Not as long as I would like, of course.
Right.
I love, like I said, I love recruiting the high school athletes. You get to know them so much better in recruiting because it's happening over a year and a half, and not 3 days.
Right.
So it's really an unknown right now. We're going to see how it all works out. I mean, ultimately, I think us and the NCAA is going to have to see how it all is figured out.
Right, because you have to transfer your 4 years of building someone up into a year, essentially.
Not even.
You're accelerating all of that into a year or less to build that team camaraderie and build that person.
Yes.
Which they could technically, I guess, still leave again the year after or 2 years later. So that's got to be an immense challenge for you to kind of adapt to that new environment, which I'm assuming with the NCAA is going to change again here in the next couple of years somehow, some way.
I don't know. It's hard to speak on what the NCAA is going to do.
That's for sure. Another big change has come out in the past couple of years, or this past year, is the NIL deal, and that's how that affects players. And in conjunction with the transfer portal, it gives guys more reason to want to jump ship, so to speak. Mm-hmm. How can Georgia State be competitive in that environment, this new world we live in with NIL deals?
Well, that's a great question. The university in itself cannot be involved in NIL. So ultimately, it's the fans, it's people outside the program that formulate the ideas and get things rolling to help the student athletes. And I was just at our Sun Belt conference meetings, and one of the coaches misspoke, and he said he had a war chest of NIL deals. And I was like, a war chest? Man, what's going on there?
One of those.
I was thinking, I'm just hoping to get him a hot dog somewhere, and he's got a war chest. And then he kind of figured out what he was saying. This is probably after a few beers he said that, and I never let him live it down. So, that's got to come from outside. It's got to be somebody that has a great love for our university, and not just one, but multiple people get together and formulate a group and say, hey, this is what we're going to do for our university, our team.
State of Atlanta, NIL Collective, we'll get it started, and we'll buy all the hot dogs for the for the guys.
Hey, for some guys, a hot dog goes a long way.
Well, the teams we play in the Sun Belt, what it costs for a hot dog in Atlanta could probably buy you a nice car in Monroe, Louisiana, or something like that.
Without a doubt, probably 2 cars in Louisiana.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, no, I mean, just from a fan perspective, seeing the transfer portal and NIL coming along, it seems like the P5 basically views G5 as minor league. We can poach what we want when we want.
They can.
And like, obviously, it's hard to counter that, right? I mean,
yeah, you know what? I don't think I can counter anything that Southern Cal is offering. North Carolina,
right.
Miami, West Virginia. I don't think I can do that.
Yeah.
It's just hard to do from our level and to their level because number one, the backing that those universities have. I mean, it's kind of a win at all costs mentality with their fans, most of their fans, and that's something we have yet to achieve here.
Do you think there's opportunity to poach backwards P5 players that are sitting on the bench that aren't playing that want to play? They don't want to just sit on a bench for 4 years at a P5 school.
Here's the one thing, and you used the word poach. We are never going to poach a player. I promise you that. Those players will be already in the portal. We are not going out and searching.
Sure.
That's just something we're not going to do, and our coaches are not going to do. Yes, I think there's great opportunity for guys that think their talents are bigger than what they are, and everyone kind of misses in recruiting. We all understand that. It's a 50-50 crapshoot, so to speak. So there's a lot of players available that go to these Power 5 programs that have a really good skill set. For whatever reason, it doesn't pan out there to bring them back here to Atlanta, especially the ones that are from the city of Atlanta and from the state of Georgia. I think that's important. And that's some of the things we've tried to focus on a little bit. There's not really that quote unquote website out there that tells you exactly where they're from.
You figure it out.
You got to have a lot of manpower because you know how many people are going in the portal every day. I mean, it's like it's a flood of individuals. But you certainly have to hear. You got to do your due diligence in studying them, seeing why they're leaving.
Right.
Is it good? Is it bad? What did they do? Are they not any good? I mean, there's a lot of players that go out there and just can't play.
Sure. I have to imagine there are students or kids that are in these schools that don't play that are fine with it, right? They don't want to play. They want to, but they're maybe not good enough. They're not going to transfer. Then there's probably kids that get there, hope to play, aren't playing, and then say, well, I can go somewhere else and play tomorrow, right? Why not?
Yeah.
So.
And most of the times, the guys that are transferring from that Power 5 program, and especially the top level Power 5 programs, they're good players. They're just not seeing the field because of the abundance of talent that's on that roster.
Right. Sure.
Something that I don't know if this translates from basketball to football, so you can just shut me down really quickly if it doesn't, but something that Coach Hunter did, and I think that Coach Hayes has started to do as well, is target players in recruiting that he knows aren't really going to come to Georgia State right now, but may want to come back at a later date. Maybe because roster sizes are so much smaller in basketball versus football. That's something you can do.
Yeah, it's very hard for us. We don't have the manpower to go recruit that many individuals.
Right.
I mean, we just don't. You think about how many players we have to recruit. If we're going to sign 25 and now maybe 35 players, to spend time on somebody you're hoping might come back is, we will extend the offer. We will reach out and have some communication, but our focus has to be on guys that we think we can have here immediately.
I got one last question about recruiting before we move on, and that's it seems like I keep on saying this from a fan perspective because that's just all we are. We're just fans of Georgia State. It seems like from a fan perspective, there's so much talent that is in Georgia. I think Georgia is like the 4th most recruited state in college football. It seems like we're getting most of our talent from outside the state, though, specifically the Carolinas, where we see a lot of guys coming from. Is it that these guys are just wanting to leave the state of Georgia, or
for the most part? I mean, the city of Atlanta, a young man that's been living in the city of Atlanta or around the city of Atlanta is not real excited about the city of Atlanta.
Sure.
I mean, it's just, for whatever reason, it's not.
Right.
And for a young man that may be in Aiken, South Carolina, that's, I guess Aiken's about 12,000, and he drives 2.5 hours down the road and sees the great city of Atlanta and sees the Falcons, the Braves, the Hawks, and music and all these concerts, and now he's really excited about the city of Atlanta. And we want people that want to be here, and I'll say it. We go, and first and foremost, we go and try and sign the very, very best players that we can, whether they're from Atlanta, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, it doesn't matter. We want the very best players first and foremost.
but we do want the players that want to be here.
Right.
And that's how you can really choose who you need to spend your time on. Because if you have to convince a young man, truly convince him to come to your school or your university, he's probably not going to be happy.
And it could be a flight risk in the transfer portal sooner than
later.
later.
Right now, you got to really be well, you can't be 100% sure, but somebody that's just really passionate about your city, your university, your lifestyle in that city, and just what you have to offer.
Excellent. Yeah. You got anything else? I got more, but
no. I mean, unless you want to move.
Yeah.
Into
Well, so this is the first year we've been playing an FCS opponent in Rhode Island, which is a pretty good FCS team.
Sure.
But past 2 years we've not played an FCS team, which personally I love. I don't have any interest in playing FCS opponents unless it's somebody that's local, like I think South Carolina always plays like the Citadel or something like that every few years. Do you have any preference? I know I'm assuming from a coach, you're like, give me a schedule and I'm going to put the best team out there every single week. But do you have a preference on what types of games we schedule out of conference, whether you'd want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all understand we have to go play one Power 5. I mean, we just have to do that for budgeting of all our sports.
Right.
Sure.
We understand that. And unfortunately, that's a tough deal. I mean, it's tough to do. Yes, we had an opportunity and went to Knoxville and beat Tennessee, but it's still very, very hard and I won't say highly unlikely, but I was speaking with a gentleman last night. The University of Georgia has just a quote unquote recruiting budget of $4.5 million. $4.5 million. Well, our operating budget isn't even half that. I mean, for the entire football program. So to go and do that, and let's just say like we have the past couple of years and schedule 2 Power 5s, that's, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's not smart. It's probably smart for the athletics department, but the record goes on my back and it goes on our kids' back, and it kind of steamrolls from there. You can take injuries out of that and completely destroy a season. A lot of things can happen. I understand that what we have to do. The one Power 5 I'm great with. I really don't care about scheduling the FCS, but if you can schedule me another group of 5, I'm all for it. So I'm all for that.
I guess building off that, so the start of the 2023 season seems a bit more manageable competition-wise than if you look at years past of what we've done scheduling. Is that something you prefer, to have a more balanced schedule leading into a season to progress?
I think we all do.
Yeah.
I think we all would like a what I call a quote-unquote competitive schedule to go out there and start the season. One of the things that I look back on a year ago, and you go and you start off the season, you play South Carolina. I thought we played South Carolina very, very well, other than 2 plays. And those were 2 devastating plays because we really felt like we could go and defeat them. And we had every intention of doing it. And the very next week, we had the University of North Carolina come in here, and we felt like we were
close.
We were. And sometimes you don't, as a coach, you don't want to say you put too much emphasis on it, but we did. I mean, we were like, one of them was going down.
Yeah, right. We all thought.
When we came up so close there at North Carolina, it was just kind of defeated us a little bit. How it would have played out a year ago if we would have said 2 group of 5 opponents, and here you are sitting at 2 or 3-0, and now going into conference schedule, and you're healthier and you're able to go out and execute a little bit more. Who's to say what could have been? But that's a tough start, emotionally, physically, playing those programs, especially when they're
you gotta be perfect.
When the SEC and ACC is paying them $60 million for just television contracts. I mean,
and you got the SEC home cooking on the refs like we did with Auburn.
Well, we had an opportunity there as well. Won't talk about
I know you can't say a lot about that, but we were you were there. We were both there. You just had the bus. We had a bus that went down there, a little booze bus. It was a good time, and I remember checking my phone during the middle of the game, and some sports analyst was commenting that Shawn Elliott's going to get Georgia State blacklisted by all SEC schools really quickly here. So.
It was really close, really close.
I mean, to that extent, is there a specific team or teams or a specific coach you would like to see on the schedule for us to play sometime?
I think you go out and you play the SEC. I mean, honestly, I think the SEC is where it's at. Everyone talks about it. Everyone across the football world talks SEC football.
Right,
so for our program to continuously grow, we've got to go play the SEC.
South Carolina, those guys. LSU this year. I mean, Alabama. We got to go play those teams because
Texas, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everyone's going to wake up and see the SEC scores.
Yep.
I mean, nobody's going to. I mean, maybe the Big 12 up north, but I really ain't looking to see who Ohio State beat. Everybody wants to know who Bama beat because they're one. And then here we go again. You got Georgia, they're one.
I was just figuring out the difference between Big 10 and Big 12, and then all the realignment came through, and I don't know which teams on which conference either. So
no, it's absolutely true. Like I had a childhood friend that saw our first Alabama score and actually called me up out of the blue because he saw Georgia State. He knew I went there. He's like, "That's awesome! You guys played, Alabama." I was like, "Yeah, it was great."
And it's great for recruiting. I mean, because so many of the high-level recruits are there at that game, and you get a chance to showcase. And I've had numerous recruits, especially after Tennessee, especially after Auburn, reach out. I'm like, well, I witnessed your team play, Coach. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to school, but this is happening here, and let's stay in touch. And those are the things I like to see.
Excellent.
And keep it right here in the Southeast because that's where the best football is.
To that end, playing LSU this year down in Baton Rouge, if my internet searching is correct, you coached with South Carolina a couple times at games down there, which I've got to say this because I harp on schedule so much. South Carolina played twice in Baton Rouge with no return trip to Columbia during that time period, and I hate that type of scheduling.
That wasn't on purpose.
Okay.
So in 2015, there was a huge flood in Columbia, South Carolina. So the game had to be moved.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
I got ran out of my house, so I was homeless because of a flood.
Oh no!
In 2015. So yes, we've had some very unusual. So we had to do that when I was at South Carolina, and then when I was at Appalachian State, the first time we went down there in 2005, and actually held a lead there in the fourth quarter, 10-7. I believe it was 10-7, and I ended up losing a real close one. And then we played them in 2007. And there was a hurricane coming, and we had to play them at 10 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. So we're eating pregame meal at 6 a.m.
That's what kids like to do.
And it was the worst. It was the worst experience of my life. I'm like, and so I couldn't understand. So I tried to tell our head coach, he'd stay on target. We got a consistent model. I was like, these kids don't want to get up at 5:30 and come to breakfast at 6 a.m. and then go play a game. I said, honestly, we ought to just wake up at about 8:30. Bus over at 9, get on that field at 10 and play.
Everybody gets a power bar on the bus.
In 2005, and honestly, we had a great chance to that was our first national championship up there. And we had a great chance to beat these guys. And guess what? That was when Hurricane Katrina happened. So there was no hotels. So guess what we did? We took a flight the day in the game, got off the bus, rolled in, played them, got off, lost by 7.
Wow. And that's the only way I want to go to Louisiana. Being a diehard Falcons fan, I hate the Saints. I hate everything about Louisiana. So when I go there, I stay in like Gulf Shores and drive over.
I mean, it's just like Auburn a year ago. I mean, we're playing them. I'm not sure what time we played them. I said, we don't need to go spend the night before the game. Waste all. And it probably would have been beneficial for us. But you have to budget. You have to save money where you can. We drove down the day of the game, got off in, I think it was Montgomery, and had lunch, rolled in there and played.
That's great. Had
an opportunity to beat them.
I was going to say about LSU is there's a lot of fans who want to, obviously these big P5 matchups, that's the games that fans circle on their schedule for years in advance. Having played down there multiple times now, to the fans that are wanting to go, what would you tell them about what the experience is playing down there in Death Valley and everything?
My first trip down there at the University of South Carolina, I believe they were 3 and we were 5, and it was a Saturday night contest, and it was probably the most unbelievable experience I've ever encountered. The drive in with that matchup, I think it was a CBS game or whatever it was incredible. You want to talk about the hair standing up on the back of your neck, the fans. I mean, that's what I love. Them fans were throwing everything at us. They were flipping us off. Old women were cussing us up and down the bus. We couldn't even drive our bus in because they just encountered that one street. There's one street that wraps around the south end of that stadium, and I mean, it just made you want to go out there and just. I mean, we could have got off the bus and fought them all. I would have that day. It was incredible. So if you get a chance, go experience it.
Yeah. They'll be friendlier, maybe.
Hopefully it's a 12 o'clock game.
Yeah, when we that
Don't let them tailgate too long.
Georgia State's very first year of football, we played. We ended the season at Alabama, and so obviously when you have number 3 and number 5 playing, it's a big difference than reigning national, or I think they weren't reigning; they would win it that year versus the newest team to all of football.
Sure.
And those Alabama fans, I don't know what they're like when they're playing Georgia or whatever, but they were so sweet to us guys.
They were like,
little
Georgia State, y'all did so well.
Where is Georgia State again?
You guys come back.
Tennessee fans were nice until the end. Then they were.
I don't know. I don't know. Tennessee fans were all that nice because it was, it was a shell shocker.
He was there. Tim was there. Yeah.
That was a fantastic game. Really good.
I think I got one last question for you, then I'll let you get back to everything. So you mentioned about Appalachian State. What's it like being in a conference, coaching against your alma mater and a team that you coached at for so many years?
Early on was very hard, very hard. I spent 18 years of my life up there, so it was hard going back in there. And my kids were born there. Me and my wife met there. She went to App State, played tennis, and it was a tough deal early on because. You just want to win so badly, and you're going against they were all my best friends, and still, the head coach up there today is a great friend of mine, and but now it's not anything. Probably the hardest part, you don't get invited back to the things that you once did, alumni events, and hey, come on up, and we got a big reunion. They're like, you're gonna leave Coach Elliott off the list now. But I tell you, this past winter, I had a chance. We went up, took my kids up there skiing, and drove in there, walked in. I mean, nobody was there on Sunday afternoon. I just walked in. I was sitting in the locker room. I was like, hey, sitting in the meeting rooms, walking around.
Looking for playbooks and stuff. We went up to the game this year. What was it? Was it Saturday? Was it or Thursday?
It was a Thursday. Wednesday.
Yeah, we drove up. I was
20
confident.
degrees.
Warm outside. Yeah.
I was confident this was the year. I firmly believed it. And
I had them on the ropes. I think we were up 21-7.
Yeah.
I think Thrash dropped looks to me, if I can remember correctly, a touchdown pass right there to go up 28-7 before halftime. And they score right there before half, and then Granger comes out, and this is the mindset of, I guess, players from the South. If you're not in the mountains, it was cold. They thought it was cold.
Very cold.
They were all Vaselining their arms, and I'm looking at these. I'm going, what is wrong with you people? I mean, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
And I think Granger fumbles on the opening possession. They go down and score, and then they figured out we're going to just run it right over you. I don't think they threw it again. And it's just unfortunate. Wasn't meant to be that night. Could have been.
We got him at home this year.
We'll
get it this year.
This could be the year, hopefully.
The year. It could definitely be the year.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Coach, for talking with us. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do it again in the future.
Let's do it again.
And really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank y'all very much. Anytime.
All right.